Welcome to Media in Minutes. This is your host, Angela Tuell. This podcast features in-depth interviews with those who report on the world around us. They share everything from their favorite stories to what happened behind the lens and give us a glimpse into their world. From our studio here at Communications Redefined, this is Media in Minutes. On today's episode, we are talking with award-winning travel journalist, TV host, and author Lisa Niver. Lisa is an adventurer who has explored all 7 continents and over 100 countries. She is also the award-winning author of Brave-ish, One Breakup, 6 Continents, and Feeling Fearless After 50. With a passion for pushing boundaries, she has journeyed through the desert in Mongolia, scuba dived with bull sharks in Mexico, snorkeled with whale sharks in the Philippines, and swam with the humpback whales in Tonga. Her adventures include polar bear walking safaris in Canada twice, taking a polar plunge in Antarctica, and experiencing thrilling safari encounters with Africa's Big Five. Lisa is also a sought-after international speaker and the host of the podcast, Make Your Own Map. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Angela. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Me too. I am very much looking forward to talking with you today. In researching for this episode, I determined I must start with your fairly recent book and memoir, Brave-ish, which I love, One Breakup, 6 Continents, and Feeling Fearless After 50. Please tell us more about your story and how you became a travel journalist.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you. And yes, I have a memoir. And Brave-ish, it's kind of funny about that book is a lot about my travel journalist journey. But I got started, it's so funny, it's like hard to know where to go back to. But I honestly, I was teaching and I left on an adventure, and my students were really sad that I was leaving, and I promised to send back a newsletter. And while I was traveling for a year, mostly in Asia, it was really the beginning of the blog revolution. And so when I came back from that trip, I started We Said Go Travel, which is my travel site. I started that in 2010.
Okay.
And building that site was the beginning of becoming an actual real travel journalist.
So you were a teacher. Was that your first career?
No, I tell people my career is like, remember the game Chutes and Ladders?
Yes, yes.
That's my career. So I went, I grew up in California. I went to Penn. I went to med school in California. I wasn't that happy. I took a year out. I tried to think about what made me happy. And I ended up starting to teach. And while I was in my sort of gap year after college, now it's much more popular to take a gap year. At the time,
Right.
I had studied an Israel semester abroad. And anyway, I guess we can call it my gap year. I learned to scuba dive. And I fell in love with scuba diving, and I was teaching. I also worked for a little while at Planned Parenthood because I was like, am I going back into medicine? Am I doing education? Where am I in science?
Right.
So when I was teaching, I really couldn't afford these exotic, amazing scuba trips that
Right.
everyone else was going on. So I ended up, a friend of my sister's had worked for Club Med, and through a series of crazy events, which is all in my book, I ended up working for Club Med skiing.
Okay.
Which is confusing because I told you I wanted to go scuba diving, but that's how it got started.
Right. There's quite a difference between cold weather sports and warm weather sports. Although it doesn't have to be warm to scuba dive, right? If you have the right
No, it
gear.
doesn't. When I was at one point after Club Med, I worked for 7 years on cruise ships. And at one point, my dive buddy and I from the Caribbean, we actually went scuba diving in Juneau in Alaska in dry suits.
Wow. Okay. So yes, that is a thing.
Dry suits. Cold is a thing, but it's been sort of when I was working on the memoir and going back and forth through my whole career, you can see that there were a lot of through lines, but it's hard when you're in your 20s or trying to figure out, like during COVID or after 9/11, which were all things that shifted my career again. You don't have a lot of perspective sometimes when you're in the middle of the storm. Like, am I making good choices? Should I keep going?
Right.
Do I start over? Like a lot of times I went back and taught. I'm like, I'll just go teach again and figure out what am I going to do next.
Yes. So how did you make it your career then, the travel writing? At what point did that happen? And how'd you do it?
I was teaching and traveling and teaching and traveling. I had started the website
Okay.
and I went on another long trip. So, one of the things that helped make it my career was having very low expenses and
Mm,
traveling in Asia on low expenses. I could run the website and, hone my craft. I did not go to journalism school, but I started going to different workshops and there's so many conferences. I have a whole playlist on my YouTube channel that's just all the different conference videos going to Travel
okay.
Classics, TBEX, IMM. I don't think there's a conference I've heard of that I haven't been to, although I am going to a
Mm,
new conference in April. I'm going for the first time to Sea Trade, which is the cruise line industry.
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I'll be there. I'm going to be in Miami for Sea Trade, and then I'm going on the brand new MSC ship. I'd say that the what made my career happen is really a lot of networking and persistence.
Yeah, you have to be very self-motivated in that type of career.
Yeah,
So,
people ask me that, like, how do you get so many videos done, or how do you get so many articles? And I tell them it's because I used to be a teacher and I basically just give myself homework
and deadlines, right?
and deadlines. Yes,
Right.
ma'am. Hmm.
So you mentioned spending 3 years traveling across Asia. What was the most surprising thing you learned?
That's a good question. The most surprising thing I learned is that you really don't need a lot of stuff
Mm,
and that slowing down can make travel so much better.
mm,
I noticed a lot of people, like, sometimes people be on a short trip and they'll ask me, I want to go to these 4 countries in Europe on my 7-day trip. I'm like, well, you
mm,
can, but you're going to come home so tired. And you'll definitely get a flavor. I think on a cruise, going to a country every day is different because you only unpack once. I don't really like the unpacking or wondering like,
mhm.
will we get in time? Which room key is it? Did we have the right address? So I like to slow down a little bit. And one trip I went on in Mongolia, we went on this 11-day van trip to the Gobi Desert, and they told me that we were going to the vast expanse of nothingness. And I said, how will I know when I get there? And they're like, Lisa, you'll know. You'll know.
And you knew.
Yeah, I mean, I think being in Asia felt like just so miraculously different. Like I speak
Yeah.
decent Spanish and I could be mostly understood in French and Italian. But being in Asia, I told someone di mak mak, or I told Frei Chan Hao. I was in China. I said, Frei Chan Hao, Frei Chan Hao. And the man looked at my traveling companion and said, I don't speak English. And he looked at her and said, she's not speaking English. So, sometimes it's very hard to be understood. Like you're like, okay, we're in a really different place. And also when I was traveling in China, we literally walked up to the bus station, kind of in the middle of nowhere. The Lonely Planet had all of the information in the, local dialect
Uh-huh.
characters. And I held open the book and some random person looked at the book and I pointed and they pointed and I put money in my hand and they took money and they put me on the bus.
And you were
And
hoping you were on the right bus, right?
not only was I hoping I was on the right bus, I was hoping someone would throw me off the bus at the right stop.
Right.
And and they could have just taken all my money and not put me on the bus, but I felt like we
Right.
really trusted in the town. And we went to this little town and the man was making noodles by hand and I took a video of him making the noodles. And you can imagine my surprise when he took a video of me eating the noodles. And then
Hey, that's
And then he showed me a photo of essentially the last Western tourist who'd come into his store and eaten.
Oh,
Because it
wow.
was a teeny little town. It was, 1,000 years old. It was amazing. It was in the Lonely Planet. We felt like we were, on the backpacker trail, sort of.
Yeah.
But it's very different, and you just have to really trust that y'all are going to get to the next place, literally.
Right. You have so many incredible travels and you've been to over 100 countries. Are there any that you would say top the others? I won't ask for a very favorite or anything, but ones that really stick out.
Actually, right now, you could ask me that because I
Mm,
just went in January to Antarctica.
mm.
And so that was my final continent. And it's on the subtitle of my book says six continents. So I was really hoping during my book tour that I'd get to my final continent because it felt like such a part of the whole book
Yeah.
process, writing the book and thinking about the book and then being like, what's your goal after the book? And Antarctica to me was such honestly, a blessing of just believing that you could make something happen, like to be invited to go there and write stories. And I went with Quark Expeditions, and it was literally every night it's an expedition ship. So it's a lot of the things they're not sure. Like this is our
Okay.
plan, but we'll see how it goes. So every night they have recap and briefing, and they talk about the day. And they said, we always hope when we're here in this part of Antarctica that we're going to see all three species of penguins that are you might see here. And, today we saw the third one, the Adelie penguin. You can
Mm.
only see them in Antarctica. Sometimes people come here and because of the weather or
Uh,
because of the ice or because of X number of reasons, we don't see them. And basically every night was like that. They're like, well, we really hope we might be able to go through the Lemaire Channel, but we have to wait till we see it with our own eyes and look at the ice and see how the flow is. And one morning we are generally up, 7:30, and there's so much to do with the Zodiac cruising and the landing. And my ship had two helicopters, which was amazing.
wow.
So one morning the speaker goes off. It was 6:20, and I'm like, good morning, get out of your beds. We can see orcas.
Oh, wow.
And just it felt very to me, magical. Like I know some people want all their lives to take their kids to Disneyland. I want all my life to go see the ice in Antarctica.
Yeah.
And just being able and I got to do funny things. So I travel with a hula hoop.
Hmm.
And so I asked for permission and I hula hooped on the bridge of the ship. And then I got permission. I hula hooped at the southernmost post office in the world at Des Moines
Mm.
Point. And the woman at the post office told me it was the weirdest question anyone had ever asked her if someone could hula hoop at the post office. So, and I have pictures of me. I have the next videos that I'm going to put up. They're not quite up yet, but is of me. I have a bunch of hula hooping up, like hula hooping in front of the
Hmm.
helicopter. But
I saw that one.
I hula hooped on the fast ice south of the Antarctic Circle, the trip I went on. So they claim about 800,000 people in human history have been to Antarctica. And
Wow.
they believe just under 100,000 have been south of the Antarctic Circle.
Wow.
And so when we were south of the Antarctic Circle, we were able to come alongside the fast ice and they took out their drills and were checking, like, was it safe? And so I took the hula hoop with me and I couldn't take off my jacket or my life jacket because of the conditions, but I was able to hoop on my arm. And so I applied, I'll have to keep you posted, but I applied for a Guinness Book World Record.
Oh, nice. Yes, do keep us posted. And we will make sure to link to these videos in our show notes too for anyone listening. I do have to ask, and this might go along with that. We'll see. But what has been the scariest brave thing you've done?
Oh, that's such a good question. So it's funny, the I normally talk about the scariest one from the 50 that are in the book.
Okay.
I had a lot of eye issues growing up. We believed that I was clumsy and not athletic. It turns out there was something wrong with my eyes. So I
Oh,
had a lot
wow.
of childhood accidents. And part of this book was, reclaiming myself. I did these 50 things after my divorce to reinvent myself. And so one of the worst accidents I had was biking. And so the scariest thing I did was I went mountain biking in Lake Tahoe on North
Mm,
Star.
okay.
That was super scary. And I really was channeling how brave I was when I was on the ship in Antarctica because I agreed to go stand up paddleboarding in Antarctica.
Wow.
And the whole time I was so nervous I was going to fall in.
Yeah.
And once I did fall in, of course I had on a dry suit, but once I did fall in, I had a much better time because I wasn't so worried.
Yes, I could see that definitely. You mentioned divorce. Was that before you started, before you went fully into travel writing, or was that in the midst of it all?
It was in the midst of it all because when I took the year in Asia, I was traveling with the man who I got engaged to the end of that first year. And
Okay.
then we got married. And then when I was traveling again in Asia, that was with him. And we had started the website together. I say we started it together. He came up with the name and I did everything else. I don't really think that counts as an even
No,
partnership.
no, not
But
at all.
so I had built a lot of the website and starting to work as a journalist kind of on and off while I was traveling and married. And then when I came home from Thailand by myself and got divorced, that was when I really went all in, like networking with all the PR
Yeah.
teams and, going more conferences and taking it more as an actual job.
Yes. Okay. Makes sense. I'm sure we can read much more about it in the book as well. How often do you travel now?
I travel every month.
Okay.
And sometimes twice a month. It depends what's going on. Like the Antarctica trip with the being in Argentina before and after, I was gone almost 3 weeks. So that was
Mm.
one trip. And recently I was in Washington, D.C. filming with the Jet Set TV. I do segments with them. You and I have talked about I did the Ireland TV special that
Yes.
was on the Jet Set.
Yes, that's great. We'll link to that also. Is there anywhere that you haven't been that's on your list?
It's funny. People are surprised that there's still so many things on my list.
Okay.
I would like to go to both Bhutan and Tibet in Asia. I have not been to those.
Mm.
That's top of my list. And although I've been almost everywhere in South America, I haven't been to Brazil, which is the biggest country.
Right.
So Brazil, when I was working at sea, the ship companies I worked with didn't go there yet. And in Africa, I've been on safari and actually hula hooped with the Maasai warriors. But there's 53 nations in Africa, and I've been to four. So there's a lot of Africa.
Yes, yes, a lot there. Oh, well, we'll keep watching and see some of those adventures, right?
I hope so. I think there's so much. I just love to learn about different people and see how they live. And I
Yeah.
really want to go see the silverback gorillas.
That would be amazing. What are you most proud of professionally so far in your career?
One of the things I'm the most proud of is my book because, in
Mm.
fairness, it was so hard for me to write, to be so honest about how terrible the situation was in my marriage and the
Mm.
abuse and feeling like a failure and starting over and feeling alone and
Aw.
yeah, it was awful to live through, and then writing it a lot of times felt like reliving it in a terrible way. I did write the first part, the first chapter in my therapist's office.
Wow.
Yeah, we kept talking about it and she's like, do you think it would help you if we did some here? And I was like, how would we do that? And so we did a few different versions, tried to figure it out. So I had a lot of support. And if I actually was at a book event last night and the woman asked me about my book when we went to dinner, and I said, if I had just written the book and never published it, it still was worth it and so cathartic.
Mm.
But it has, the book came out September 2023, and I'm still doing events almost every month for the book. People keep inviting me, which is I feel very grateful.
Yeah.
And the book just won its 10th award.
Wow, congratulations. That is
Thank you.
fantastic.
Thank
And
you.
I know that you also have published, it hasn't just been the book, more than 2,000 articles in more than 3 dozen magazines and journals, including, I'll just name a few, National Geographic, Wired, Teen, Vogue, HuffPost, Pop Sugar, ARP, Hemispheres Today. I could keep going.
Yes.
What is your current focus when it comes to articles?
So lately I've been writing a lot for both Reader's Digest and Booking.com.
Okay.
And and also I have a story, a March story in print in Pasadena Magazine about
Mm.
Ireland. And then in May for Pasadena Magazine, I have a story about Antarctica. And also, I did a walking safari with the polar bears.
What?
It was amazing.
Wow.
That's actually that's my second Guinness Book attempt is that I'm going my attempt is that I did a polar plunge in the Arctic and the Antarctic. Within 6 months, I did both.
Wow. Did
Yeah, it's been an exciting, crazy, busy time.
Yes, yes.
I have written for a lot of different places, and one of my focuses is, to be able to share the destinations that I'm invited to as widely as possible. So putting them on the Jet Set TV or like Antarctica, I also got to go here in LA on Spectrum News One and talk about that. So trying to
Mhm.
get broadcast and print. And then, like you said, I have my site, We Say Go Travel. I also write for MSN. My articles go to Google News. So there's a lot of syndication.
So a lot of our audience are PR professionals, publicists, some other journalists. So do you have any stories about working with PR professionals that are most memorable, either in a positive or negative way that could help us learn?
I think the relationships I've built with PR teams that have been the best have been the ones where it's not just transactional about, can you do something
Yeah.
with this press release or last minute. So I have a few people that I've worked with literally since 2014 when I came back from Asia when I first, was getting divorced. At the time I was writing a lot for USA Today in the 10 best section.
Mhm.
And I met a few people in real life. I think that makes a difference to
Yeah.
know the people, especially if they're local. And, we used to get together and go out for a meal and just talk. And over the years with this one particular person, I remember once he called me, and at the time he was working with Doubletree, and
Uh-huh.
they had this cookbook because they have the cookies. And they made this cookbook, and every country or every hotel put like a different version recipe. And he called me, he's like, no one will write about this. I said, that's because it's not a story. And he said, is there anything you could do to help me? And at the time I wrote for She Knows. It was a different, they've all gone through
Right,
different.
right.
I wrote for Thrive. I wrote for She Knows. I wrote for Huffington Post. Like they've all evolved all their community situations and open platforms and, pitching and whatever. But anyway, at the time I had She Knows. And I was like, listen, I have an idea. I can do it for you for She Knows, but here's what I want. He's like, I will do anything for you. So we've had that over the years where I did, he could lean on me and I could
Yeah.
figure something out for him and vice versa. So, when he did a global fam for not just Doubletree, but for Hilton, I went, we did two continents and three cities and it was a
Wow.
crazy trip, but it was so fun. And he was like, you're the top of my list because you help me.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people sometimes forget is, we're all here together trying to be kind and nice and answer emails and not just be snappy in a bad
Yes, and
way.
it really is all about relationships. Like you said, that word is in public relations, but that is really what helps us all do our job best.
I was just thinking that it's just so true that you just have to take a little extra time and be kind, especially right now in the world. There's so much, but my book came out and a couple weeks later the massacre happened October 7th in Israel, and it's been
Mm,
a very hard time to be a Jewish journalist. And
yes.
I so appreciate when people say, like, how are you doing? Like, or, everyone has a lot of opinions about the United States politics right now, and with good reason. And so, there's people are impacted by that, or, knowing if someone's situation with their home life. I think that's important to treat people like actual people.
Absolutely. And when we look at sometimes with travel journalists or talking with you, it seems like, oh, you've got this dream life. But we know it's so much work as well. Do you do all of your own filming? I mean, obviously writing and that sort of thing, but do you do everything yourself? And what are the challenge or kind of the give and take that you give up for having such a, quote unquote dream life?
So I basically, as many ways as you could imagine that it would work, is how I do it. Like for example, in Antarctica, I filmed almost everything myself, except when I needed help and I could manage it. Like someone else filmed me hula
Okay.
hooping on the ice or hula hooping across the circle on deck. But I'm doing all the editing for that. For the Ireland TV segment, that was a full show that we filmed in Ireland. So I had a crew with me. I had three people with me, camera, sound, and I was all the logistics, but
Right.
that was a team. And then a separate person did all the edits. So that was a big team for relative to being by myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot to manage all the emails and the edits and the schedule and running like when does stuff go on the podcast and
Mhm.
as keeping up with pitching, like following up with the editor for the what feels like the 6,000th time, like, okay, remember you said you liked my idea. But in
Right.
a kind and nice way. And as far as the give and take, it can be hard to be away and miss things and trying to figure out, can you make it to that event for your friend or do you have to say no to the trip or
Mhm.
it's definitely some juggling, but everyone that works has to juggle how many days can they be off. You not necessarily get to every bat mitzvah or every family holiday because
Yeah.
traveling has gotten very expensive. Flights have gone up a lot, hotels have gone up. It's um I think a lot of people struggle with that. And I'm, from both sides for PR and the journalist side to send people, it's very expensive.
It is. It's very hard. And I know I've talked about this with others is we completely understand and know that freelance journalists cannot guarantee coverage. There's another side to it with the clients that are like, but we're investing so much money and how do we invest this and then not sure if we get coverage. But it's our job obviously to choose the journalists who will who write often and we know will do their best pitching stories. But it's definitely a balance there.
I think that is one of the hardest things is that messiness. And so for myself, I am very cautious about what I agree to take
Yeah.
because I don't want to be in the position where I can't deliver. And so one of the things that I have, because we said go travel and it syndicates, I also write for the Jewish Journal as my 14th year. So
Mm.
I can confirm coverage for, my site, MSN, the Jewish Journal. I've for Antarctica, I have 4 episodes that I recorded in Antarctica that'll be on my podcast. And in
Wow.
Ireland, we recorded 2 episodes that are already live on my podcast. So I have, with the TV segments, if I can confirm that, plus the podcast, plus the writing, and then like for Antarctica, I have a bunch of pitches out. I already confirm the story for print for Pasadena Magazine, but I have a few other pitches out. So you're right. I think that you have to have it's like a full court press of like so many things. And so for myself, I know you mentioned that I have the videos. So I posted my 51st video, my 51st reel for Antarctica. That's a
Wow.
lot of coverage. And they are my best performing videos ever. They're
Mhm.
doing great on TikTok. They're amazing interaction on Facebook and really good on YouTube. My YouTube's over 2.25 million views now. So there's a lot
Wow.
happening.
Yes, yes. It's like, how do you keep track of it all? We also you mentioned the podcast that we have to talk about before we go. Make Your Own Map is a little over 2 years old, right? And tell us
Yes,
more.
yes. So I started Make Your Own Map when I turned in my book. I turned in my
Okay.
book in December and I started Make Your Own Map and I just wanted to be able to try something different. And I love talking to people. And, podcasting is so interesting. One of the things that inspired me to start my podcast was at the time, Spotify was one of the first, I believe, with a focus on video podcasting.
Okay.
And so I wrote to a couple of my friends in the media side and I was like, I don't really understand what is this video podcast? How is it different from a movie? It seems like a movie and I'm good at that. I know how to make a
Mhm.
video. And my one friend was like, I don't see any difference. I'm like, so I could just put up the video? I could interview someone on Zoom and do the video and that's a podcast now? And she said, I think so. That's basically how it got started because I figured, well, if it's not right, I'll have to pivot. But I started because Spotify bought the one that it was. I can't remember the exact name, but I worked through a different company that was specific with Spotify for video. Now it's called
Okay.
Spotify for podcasting or something like that. And then YouTube made its own special thing about YouTube for podcasting. And because I'd been on YouTube already so long, I was automatically had the access for the YouTube
Mm,
podcast because a few people messaged me. They're like, "Oh, I want to have my podcast on YouTube." And I was like, "You just click on it." And I'm like, "Nope, nope. I
didn't
cannot
work.
click on it." I was like, I'm sorry. I've had YouTube a really long time and I have a lot of everything on YouTube. I have subscribers, I have
Right.
views. So there was a thing where you had to have like you had to earn in. You had to have like a certain
Okay.
amount of minutes to be able at the time. It may be very different now, but I just always I'm willing to try almost anything. Someone was asking me last night when we were out to dinner after the book event about TikTok. They're like, "You're on TikTok?" I'm like, "I had to." My agent had this workshop about social media and they gave a challenge to get on TikTok and every author had an excuse. I'm too old, I'm too ugly, I don't sound good. Anyway, the challenge was to make 5 TikTok reels a day for 30 days. Everybody refused to
A
do it. So,
lot.
oh my God, it's huge. So I agreed to do one day. I said, I'll do one day. That's how I do everything, small steps. I'll do
Yeah.
one day. I'll make 5. I was in Vegas for a scuba convention. I was like, I'll do one day. And I met a couple people during the day that were good at TikTok and they gave me tips after I'd done the workshop. And that night at dinner, one of the ladies knew stuff about Instagram bonuses. Everybody helped me. And then I had like 1,000 views the first day. So I was like, okay, I'll do the second day. Anyway, never gave up. I just kept doing it. Only one day, only one more video. At the end of 30 days, I agreed to do another 30 days. And at the end of 90 days, that was when I signed the contract with my publisher.
Wow.
Yes, it's very hard to keep going sometimes, but I always recommend people start very small. If you can start for free, people always ask me, should I pay for a logo for my website? Should I buy hosting for my
Yeah.
podcast? Should I hire someone? I'm like, if you have money to burn, you do whatever you want. But I always recommend, well, just try it. Maybe it's not for you. Maybe you don't want to post every week. Maybe you only want to post once a month. Maybe you're not a podcaster, you're a TikToker. Because over the years, right? The website started in 2010. It's been a long journey for me. Over the years, I mean, I remember when there was no Twitter. And then all of a sudden people were like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, you have to join this thing. It's called Twitter." I'm like, "What is that?" So over the years I've added each thing, but there's a one of those cartoons you sometimes see and it says, "How do you eat an elephant?"
Mm-hmm. One
One
bite.
bite at a time.
Yes. Yes. Oh, that's such great advice. So, what is the best way for our listeners to connect with you online? I know there are so many ways, and we'll include
Yes.
all of those links.
I know. I think we just overwhelmed everyone. But you can find me on pretty much any social media platform with my name, Lisa Niver. And I have a website that's lisaniver.com. I have wesaidgotravel.com. And both of those websites have access to my book, my podcast. Oh, yeah. And I have a class.
Oh, okay. We will link to that also.
Yeah, I'll give you a code and people can have a free complimentary access. It's Travel Writer 101. It's on a platform called Udemy. And people always ask me how could they get started as a travel writer? And so many people ask me, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna make this
Mm,
class.
love it.
And I call it's like an appetizer. It's just a little taster of the different areas you have to do if you want to be a travel writer. And I link in my course to people that have longer courses about specific things. Like the Nina from Travel and Leisure has an amazing
Hmm.
class. But I don't necessarily know if you've never written for anywhere that you want a huge class. Like my class is just a taster.
That's great. Thank you so much, Lisa. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Angela. This has been so much fun.
That's all for this episode of Media in Minutes, a podcast by Communications Redefined. Take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to our show. We'd love to hear what you think. You can find more at communicationsredefined.com/podcast. I'm your host, Angela Tuell. Talk to you next time.